What's up, everybody? We are back. John Della Rose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction. You should have figured that when I read X-Force 1 and X-Force 2 came out a couple months ago, that I would be reading X-Force 2. So now I'm all caught up on this series, and I'm glad there's not more. Spoiler alert. All right. So Volume 1 really was Rob Liefeld, and there was just a lot of grit teeth, a lot of muscles, and a lot of grit teeth, not so many feet. And then Greg Capullo came in at the end of it. And honestly, guys, it's not Rob Liefeld, but it's John Romita Jr. doing Rob Liefeld. So they've tried to keep that tone so much. And here it is. No feet, grit teeth, big muscles. Obviously, John Romita Jr.'s art with like kind of the squarish faces and things like that, but it's just more of it. And it opens up with a background issue of Cable when he was in his mercenary days. Boom, 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 boom. And it jumps back and forth in time for now and back then, and these missions he was running with his merc group, so bad to the bone. And, oh man, this was really hard to read, guys. I'm not going to lie. But it does give a little background and, like, actually kind of opens up that mystery of the Strife character a little bit more that was being built. I guess that was the primary enemy of the early X-Force. Really what's been going on is, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. was hunting Cable, and they're hunting Strife in this Mutant Liberation Front, which is, like, a terrorist mutant organization. And everybody's kind of hunting X-Force because X-Force is really, you know, their tactics are just as bad as the bad guys, kind of. So they're just killers here. All these big spreads all over the place. Oh my gosh. Look at these weird proportions. I mean, he doesn't even look muscular. He just looks big and fat. And that's what you get here. And then you get all these side... I hate this. The having to turn the book sideways. Especially for panels like this, where they're not even like... It's like... I mean, they didn't need to do that. This could have been done on one page. I'm sorry. Okay. But over this, you kind of learn about Strife, and you learn of Cable's background history with, you know, a couple of these guys. Another sideways page. Jeez. Hate it. There's no need to do this. Okay. And Cable finally learns that Strife has the same face as him at the very least over the course of this, and they almost in more sideways pages. I'm not even going to turn the book. And then it kind of ends, and, you know, yay. Okay, so we get into the Executioner's Song, and so everything that's kind of been building up with this whole Strife plotline builds here. And actually, for the first couple issues of this, Uncanny X-Men 294, you know, things are okay. And this is all right. And we go to a concert where Xavier's going to speak, and it looks like Cable's going to do something. He's going to get Professor X. What's going on? So you get a little confusing, a little cheesecake action right here. All right. And Jean Grey mentally knows that Cyclops is checking them out. Bad boy. And mainly, even though there's a lot of pages of a bunch of different stuff here, Professor X is going on stage, talk about mutants and humans living in harmony, and he gets shot like, you know, Martin Luther King style, basically. And I think that was the message of this. And then everybody kind of reacts to that. So in X Factor, Peter David writes this, and Jay Lee does the pencils. I forget who did the Uncanny X-Men pencils at this point. Who was it? Is it Adam Kubert? Brandon Peterson. No, Adam Kubert comes later, I guess. No, he's in regular X-Men, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's interesting. Jay Lee's art's all right, I guess. It feels... There's a lot of not backgrounds and things like that, so you don't get much of a sense of place out of his writing, or out of his art, I guess. And the colors are kind of funky in here in this early 90s coloring schemes where they're trying to change things up and be a little more dynamic, but it just makes it harder to read these books. So what ends up happening, oh yeah, the grit teeth. What ends up happening is, like, Professor X is shot. They're going to go after Cable because I think it's Cable's the one who does it. Mr. Sinister gets involved in this stuff because he wants, like, some DNA or something. And Apocalypse, they keep mentioning him, and he'll eventually show up, and Apocalypse then is a part of this also. So they really just ramp up far too many characters that really are not all that necessary towards this whatsoever. And that's going to be the inherent problem, is every page you're going to be jumping back and forth between Wolverine fighting or Strong Guy fighting or, you know, Siren fighting. And it's just like there's just too many characters to keep track of. And they're not really necessary whatsoever. So they just shoehorn so many freaking characters into this. And because of that, it just draws out forever. You're supposed to care about Cable. Eventually you find out that Cable really isn't the one who did it, and that he's after Strife too. They team up. And I'm just going to skip over this because it's all kind of the same. You get all these, like, big white backgrounds where you don't really get any backgrounds with these, like, grit teeth characters that are supposed to be edgier, etc. And honestly, it doesn't matter too much who seems to be doing the art. I guess I like this Brandon Peterson the best because you can actually see some backgrounds here. This is where Apocalypse shows back up. And then Apocalypse ends up kind of fighting by their sides to try to stop Strife. So you get some personal dynamics in there that are pretty interesting on that end. With a lot of team up here. I just find this hard to read. I mean, just look at the art. It's just like so the lines blend into the black colors so much. It's just difficult. All right. And eventually they find out that, like, Strife kind of is Cable, but kind of not. I don't know. It's not exactly clear. But he's from the future, and he captures Scott and Jean Grey and blames them for, you know, abandoning him or whatever, and then kind of has this coming to Jesus moment that they're really not that bad before he gets all wrecked. But at the, and I guess there's, like, Strife is coming back because he doesn't want this, like, mutant ascendancy to happen or something. Cable has come back and he wants to control the mutant ascendancy rather than, you know, be an anarchy about it. And that, they're kind of from the same futures where that's a thing. And that's, I guess, the motivation behind all of this at the end of the day. And so Strife shot Professor X to try to, like, stop that from happening. And eventually they find out that he's got a secret moon base. And so they go up to the moon base and they all fight and they grit their teeth together with more grit teeth. And it's just so drawn out. This is a 12-part story that could have been done in, like, 3 issues. There is not that much story here, and it just goes forever and ever and ever. I mean, this is a pretty neat look, but whatever. I mean, it also doesn't make any sense. Like, why is she, like, got her hands back and Jean, I don't know. But whatever. We find out they're on their moon, and like I said, you get your weird art that, like, doesn't really show any time or place. You get all the blacks that kind of just blend things in together. Again, maybe I don't like Jay Lee's art. Maybe that's the issue here. But it's not. It's the story, too. The story's so thin. Oh, well. More grit teeth. More fighting. They've all fought each other at this point. They fought X-Force at some point, blaming them, and now X-Force is fighting with, like, to be with them and helping them. And, you know, there's 50 different groups here. Apocalypse has his band of people who, like, betrayed him for Strife because Strife was stronger. Now Apocalypse goes and kicks their butts. And here we are. Cable's like, hurrah! Here's my muscles, bruh. And my guns and my pouches. Thanks, Greg Capullo. Sideways art again. So you see, it's just like, this was so hard to get through. I can't even believe it. At least Greg Capullo's art's like, I know where the characters are, and it's like there's nothing that funky about it. And then it turns out he's just like kind of, Strife is kind of like this just childlike form who just like really just needed his mommy and daddy. And unfortunately, that's going to be the end of him for now. Because nothing's really the end in X-Men. And they beat him up on the moon. They're sad about it. So much was lost. Cable died. Spoiler, also. So Cable died, Strife died. They kind of all disappear at this point. They'll be back, though. Don't worry about it. It's comics. And that's the end of that. So, really anticlimactic, too, because it's like, I don't know. I just didn't feel like there were that big of stakes. I mean, when Professor X got shot and he needed to survive, that was about the biggest stakes I cared about in the whole thing. And that took 12 issues to resolve for him to just, like, beat the technovirus that was overcoming him. The rest just, like, I just didn't feel it. So, that was it. Then we get this, like, all-new collector's edition. Collector's #1. Collectible. By the way, it's collectible. And Professor X, like, sees Strife's files on people, and it's just character dossiers, but from Strife's perspective. So, wasn't the most interesting. All right, New Warriors. And so at this point, this is a totally unrelated storyline. Cannonball and Warpath are working with what's her name, Firestorm, and they're going after some stuff. I actually like the background of this. There's a little romance going on between two characters. I've not read the New Warriors, so like I don't know much about what's going on. We get a little Speedball. I had just read Steve Ditko's Speedball, so I was stoked to see Speedball. And I'm like, what the heck? His parents are getting divorced? This is very un-Speedball, unchild Speedballish of them. But that has nothing to do with the storyline that's actually going on here. And what happens is, I guess she does something, and she gets a new costume, and that's that. And her new costume looks better, but I don't know. I need to read that in context of the New Warriors. I don't really understand what that was in here. It had no impact on the X-Force. It just happened to have those two characters in it. All right. Now, this is actually the most interesting issue of the entire book, and there's not much action in it, believe it or not. This is a very iconic picture of Boomer right here. And they're getting new costumes throughout this, and they're kind of just hanging at the X-Mansion after this whole debacle just went down. That's a coda to the whole deal. And we just kind of get reintroduced to all of the X-Force characters. There's Sam talking to Xavier, and he's like, what are you going to do with my team? Cable's gone, so, you know, that's probably going to hurt sales, I'm going to guess. Cable was pretty popular. But at the same time, they are still trapped at the X-Mansion, and Sam is like, and here's like, I always just tell my wife, they love, in this 90s period, the team standing around with grit teeth, looking badass. And that's another trope that they just do in these 90s books. But imagine standing in front of Professor X, just like posing. Which is what they're doing. It doesn't even make sense. But whatever. Guess it looks cool. As long as it looks cool. Let's do it, guys. But that's the 90s books for you. It's tough. But basically, Sam's like, I'm going to take my team out. We're going to do our thing, and we're still going to be a team. And Professor X is like, are you sure you're making the right call? And he's like, well, we'll figure it out. We're adults. He's like, I guess you are. And then they leave. And that was actually interesting because there was actually some personal development there that actually felt like the characters were doing something. And even though there was like very little action, I mean, there were a couple danger room scenes just to like break things up. This issue like was the only interesting issue of the entire volume. And now I'm actually interested in volume 3 because it's like, oh, they're a leaderless team who like lost Cable. Now they're trying to find their way in the world. Maybe they'll actually do something with that as a group and have some character development and all that. But otherwise, I mean, you saw it. It was just the most drawn out thing I've ever read. And that whole Cable miniseries ahead of it was a part of drawing that out. So it was really hard to get through this. But I did it. I did it for you, dear readers, dear viewers, whatever you are. And yeah, I missed this at the beginning, but it's Cable, Blood and Metal 1 and 2, Uncanny X-Men 294 to 296, X-Factor 84 to 86, X-Men 14 to 16, X-Force 16 to 19, Strife Strike File, and New Warriors 31. These crossovers are just killers. And I mean, I get why they do it for sales purposes or whatever, but like, I do not want 12-part crossovers like this. with so many characters just jumping across the screen, and like none of what they're doing actually matters to the plot whatsoever. You know, it's like, just tell the story and please stop. That's it. Yeah, I mean, over my review of this, I actually decided I dislike Jay Lee's art a lot more than I thought I did. Greg Capullo, I probably dug his art. Brandon Peterson's is probably the best out of the bunch. And who was the fourth? Andy Kubert. Andy Kubert did okay. But overall, I mean, it was just like a lot of going fast with a lot of crowd scenes of fighting and a lot of no backgrounds. So it just made it hard to connect to anything in this. And so I'll give this like a 5 out of 10, I guess. This is one of the worst epics I've read. So there you go. All right. Leave a comment down below. Do you love this stuff? Am I wrong? It's okay. I won't shame you for it. And hit the like and subscribe button if you like my Epic Collection reviews. I'll talk to you later.